They invented IMAX black and white for certain sequences.
This movie. Chris is really great in that he wants it for real.
His first experience using an IMAX camera was on The Prestige.
He wants it in camera. He doesn't want to do CG.
There is a clear and evident pattern to Christopher Nolan's career. I'm not talking about mind-bending concepts or his immaculate use of time, but something even more insane.
IMAX
cinema.
With every single movie, he doesn't just want to tell a story, he wants to break a rule of filmmaking. He crashed a real 747 for Tenet. He planted 500 acres of real corn just to destroy it for Interstellar. He recreated a nuclear explosion without CGI for Oppenheimer. We always ask, how can he possibly top that? Well, for his next project, The Odyssey, he isn't just adapting Homer's ancient myth. He's attempting a technical feat that was, until right now, physically impossible. For the first time in cinema history, he has shot an entire feature film exclusively on 70mm IMAX. To actually pull this off, IMAX had to develop brand new, completely silent cameras specifically for the production, and the scale of what they have captured with them is absolutely staggering. Out there on a grueling 91-day shoot on real oceanic locations, they rolled through more than 2 million feet of film. That amounts to 380 hours of raw footage.
Like the day I went, there was like a boat and these massive jet engines, and they had like actually made a storm, and the boat cracked, and the warriors went in the water. I was like, this is amazing. This is what we do. Yeah.
Let that sink in for a moment. 380 hours. The Odyssey will definitely be physically longer than the famous 11-mile film print of Oppenheimer. To understand why this movie is going to change history and why going fully IMAX was considered an impossible dream, we have to talk about why Nolan loves to shoot on film and the massive price he has paid to get it.
See one of the actors in a Spitfire, really no way that you could create that in a computer.
The Odyssey is the first film in history to be shot entirely with IMAX film cameras. And for those who are thinking, what's the big deal in that? We have to understand what an IMAX camera actually represents. Firstly, there is a massive difference between a movie being filmed for IMAX and a movie being filmed with IMAX. When you see a poster that says filmed for IMAX, it usually just means the director used a really high-end digital camera that IMAX approved and will be able to be projected on an IMAX screen. It looks fantastic, but at the end of the day, it's just a really big digital file. But filmed with IMAX, that means they used actual physical 70mm IMAX film cameras. Instead of running normal sized film vertically, these cameras take a huge strip of film and run it sideways. This makes a physical picture frame nearly 10 times larger than a standard movie. If you compare it to a 4K television in your living room, real IMAX film has a resolution of about 18K. It is literally the highest quality image format that human beings have ever invented. When you see it in a real IMAX theater, the screen completely disappears into your peripheral vision. You aren't just watching the movie, you're figuratively inside it. Christopher Nolan is absolutely obsessed with this format, but his obsession comes with a massive price tag because he literally treats these $500,000 bulky cameras like they are cheap action cams. Back in 2008 for The Dark Knight, he decided to shoot the underground chase scene in Chicago using IMAX. At that time, there were only 4 of these specific cameras in the entire world, and Nolan managed to obliterate one of them when a stunt truck flipped and smashed directly into it.
Then, of course, we were shooting in IMAX. We put the IMAX cameras on the street to capture this. We had one camera inside the ultimate arm. You know, you're biting your nails when this thing's about to go down.
Did that stop him? Not at all. 4 years later, on the set of The Dark Knight Rises, a stunt double riding the Batpod motorcycle crashed right into another one. But the absolute craziest incident happened during Dunkirk. He wanted to capture an authentic plane crash from the pilot's point of view. So they bolted a real IMAX camera to a plane and dumped it into the ocean. It was supposed to float so they could grab the footage, but it sank straight to the bottom. That camera was submerged under the intense pressure of the ocean for over 90 minutes before a team of divers could pull it out. But here is the amazing part, and it proves why Nolan refuses to use digital cameras. Because it was an analog camera capturing physical film, the salt water didn't instantly corrupt a hard drive. The actual strip of the film survived. They took it out, developed it, and the footage was perfectly intact. Every single destroyed camera and every crazy stunt has been stepping stone leading to this exact moment with The Odyssey. He has conquered the insane weight and the unbelievable financial risk of taking these cameras out onto the open sea for 3 months. But there is a reason no one has ever shot a whole movie with these cameras, and it brings us to the final boss of IMAX filmmaking. IMAX cameras are incredibly difficult to focus, and worst of all, they are loud. This noise is the reason why historically IMAX film cameras are only used for big action set pieces, where the music and explosions drown out the camera motor. For quiet dialogue, it's an absolute nightmare. This is exactly why Nolan's films are sometimes infamous for muffled dialogue. But for The Odyssey, good enough simply wasn't an option. Nolan wanted to shoot the entire movie on IMAX film, every whisper, every monologue, every single moment. So IMAX actually had to go back to the drawing board. They developed a brand new generation of 65mm film cameras specifically to address these issues. These new units feature an upgraded sound suppression blimp. This engineering breakthrough unlocks the impossible. It allows Nolan to bring that massive 18K clarity to intimate moments. We aren't just going to see a big action movie. We are going to see the vast Aegean Sea and the towering Cyclops with a level of texture and scale that has literally never been put on a screen before. Universal Pictures has officially called this a mythic action epic shot across the world using brand new IMAX film technology. They are basically marketing the film with it. Nolan is taking the oldest story in Western literature and pairing it with the absolute bleeding edge of analog technology. He's not just making a movie, he's proving that even after Oppenheimer, he still has brand new frontiers to conquer. But the cameras, the film stock, and the sheer volume of footage are only half the story. The real question that has everybody speculating is what exactly is he going to shoot with those quiet IMAX cameras? See, The Odyssey isn't a historical drama like Oppenheimer or a grounded war movie like Dunkirk. It is a full-blown fantasy. It is the foundational text for Western mythology. We are talking about the one-eyed Cyclops, the enchanting sirens, and the wrath of Poseidon. In modern Hollywood, if a studio greenlights a movie with sea monsters and angry gods, there is exactly one way they film it. You put your lead actor in a giant air-conditioned room surrounded by blue screens, you put motion capture dots on a guy holding a tennis ball on a stick, and you hand the footage over to an overworked visual effects studio to fix it in post-production. But Christopher Nolan despises that approach. This is the director who built a massive rotating hallway for Inception just so he wouldn't have to use zero-gravity CGI. This is a filmmaker who defines his entire aesthetic by what he calls tactile realism. He wants you to feel the grit, the wind, and the physical weight of the objects on screen. So how do you apply tactile realism to a giant mythological monster? Nolan has gone on the record saying he drew heavy inspiration from the legendary special effects artist Ray Harryhausen, the pioneer of stop-motion animation. He wants to depict a realistic interpretation of Greek mythology. What does that actually mean? It means he's stripping away the magical glow and looking at how ancient people interpreted terrifying natural phenomena as actions of gods. We aren't going to get a CGI sludge fest. We are going to get a massive, physical, practical interpretations of these myths. And he is building them for real. When filming started in Morocco, Nolan didn't use a digital model for the fall of Troy. He literally built a full-scale timbered Trojan horse on the beach. He is grounding the oldest fantasy story in the world into something raw, terrifying, and deeply psychological. And to make it real, he had to break the ultimate unwritten rule of Hollywood. If you ask Steven Spielberg, James Cameron, or anyone who has ever made a movie on the water, they will tell you the exact same thing. Never shoot on the open sea.
What did you do with your non-working shark problem?
Well, the first mistake with the shark was they made a big mistake and they built it for fresh water.
What's the difference?
Well, electrolysis is a major problem when you get salt into all the machinery, into the electrical system.
It is unpredictable, it is dangerous, and it ruins schedules. It's the reason Jaws was a nightmare and Waterworld went massively over budget. But Nolan didn't want to shoot this in a comfortable water tank back in Los Angeles. To capture the true despair and isolation of Odysseus' journey, he dragged his cast and his incredibly expensive, newly blimped IMAX cameras out onto the real waves. They filmed across the coasts of Greece, Italy, Iceland, and Scotland. They even filmed on Favignana, the actual Sicilian island where scholars believe the real Odysseus might have come ashore with his doomed crew. Nolan has spoken about how the ocean is vast, terrifying, wonderful, and benevolent as the conditions shift. He wanted the audience to understand the absolute leap of faith those ancient sailors were taking in an unmapped, uncharted world.
How was shooting this movie, Christopher Nolan?
Fantastic. Yeah, it was absolutely the pinnacle of my entire career. I loved every minute of it.
Really?
Yeah, I just loved it.
Amazing.
And the only way to convey that on screen was to actually confront the elements on a daily basis. The world pushes back at you when you are on the water, and that struggle is going to bleed directly into the performances. And the IMAX camera will capture every aspect of Odysseus' struggles, his apprehensions, and his miraculous journey back to Ithaca. We have watched Nolan go from nervously strapping an IMAX camera to a car for a few minutes of the dark night, to sinking them in the ocean, to literally forcing IMAX to invent new silent cameras just so he can shoot Homer's epic on the open water. Because of all this insane effort, you're actually going to feel the cold ocean spray, the terrifying scale of these practical monsters, and the sheer weight of a 20-year journey back home. He's taking the oldest story in the world and telling it with the most immersive visual tool we have today, and I honestly can't wait. If you found this video insightful and are interested in watching more, check out our video on Paul Thomas Anderson's One Battle After Another right here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.